Okay, we're recording. So, welcome everybody. This is our March conversation with, of course, a very special guest, Jeanné Lewis. Welcome, Jeanné.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. So, I will admit that no one needs to tell any of us that we live in these rather unsettling times. And I had looked for a guest for some time to address some of the issues that we're going to talk about today. As one of my friend Lynn and I often say, that we are born with way too much of the happiness factor. So for me to be a little unsettled, I was looking for someone to talk to us about some of these kind of issues that we all face in these times. And so I'm going to, read your bio so to put things in context for everybody. But in the show notes and on the blog post, there'll be a lot more of that detail. So while I read it, I wanted first, let me say that Jeanné is a national faith leader. And I'm just so thrilled that you're here, that we can host you for this, ladies to lunch conversation. So while we do that, Bill's going to show a little bit of the tablescape that I did in your honor. It's a spring, it's a time of hope. So it's kind of a metaphor for some of the things that I hope that we'll be addressing today. And so for folks that don't know Jeanné, she serves as the CEO at the Faith in Public Life. She is a nonprofit executive, faith-based organizer, and authority on creating empowered communities. She has dedicated her career to building bridges, closing equity gaps, and creating policies that lead to a strong, thriving, and self-determined cities. As the Vice President and Chief Engagement Officer at the National Center for Responsive Philanthropy, Jeanné connected social justice organizations to the funding networks they traditionally lacked access to, so they can increase their impact and persuade funders to improve their practice. And prior to that, she was the director of the U.S. programs at Search for Common Ground, yay, responsible for advancing bipartisan conversations and policies to address the unfortunate case of racial injustice. She's further built support networks for military families, yay, and worked as a faith-based community organizer in Ohio and Florida. Her consulting company, One-to-One Consulting, specializes in conflict resolution, strategic coalition building, and developing and implementing community-led organization. Jeanné resides in Washington, D.C., and is a member of the D.C. Working Families Party, St. Augustine Catholic Parish, and Songrise, a women's social justice a cappella group. So she's a singer, obviously. More detail to follow. She has a MA in conflict resolution from Antioch University Midwest. Woo! That's a lot. That's a lot. So
That is a
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Exactly. So you can see even some of our scales here on the tablescape. So any of you that are as passionate as I am about tablescapes, I'll do another thing for that on my blog posts and in social media. So Jeanné, for your work, many might refer to it more as a calling than as a career. So, if you can tell us, do you agree with that? And then how would you describe how you chose your career path or your life journey?
Yes, I 100% would agree with that, Leanne. I believe, as a person of faith, I believe that each of us has a purpose in this world. And sometimes when we hear about purpose or calling, we think something very grand or, making national or legacy news. But sometimes our purpose is to care for a family, or sometimes our purpose is to care for a community. But each of us has that purpose. And I think the best case scenario is when your career meets that purpose. And I do feel that mine accomplishes that. Yes.
Did you have like some, like angel that came down, or was it a kind of a process that you arrived at this?
Yes, I think it's a process. So being at Faith in Public Life, I think, is a good confluence. It's a coming together of a few key experiences in my life. I was always a person of faith. My family is very religious. My grandmother, in fact, was a pastor and started her own church when she was in her late 50s. And very early on, I was exposed to different types of Christianity, Catholicism, my grandmother's church. I went to a Christian school, a Southern Baptist school, until I was in 6th grade. And so that was very formative for me. So faith is key. I also was a community organizer coming out of college. That was my first job. And so I learned about bringing people together across different religions to build power to make change in their communities. And then I think the third key experience, I ran for public office in 2020. I ran for DC City
Okay.
Council. I did not win, but I do believe I made a difference. And so, this role at Faith in Public Life, an organization I had known for many years, became open, and I saw it as a combination of many of those experiences. And that's how I discern that it is a calling for me.
Yeah, for sure. And that's very powerful. I mean, I was raised Roman Catholic and we went to Catholic school for our first 8 years. Some of my siblings even went on, into high school. And so and I would say that we're, still very practicing and religious and so on. But so much of the world and our country seems to have gotten away from that. And I think that sense of community. So some people call it indoctrination, some people call it, still like a calling. So maybe you can address that, but at the same time, maybe you can share how you prepare for this. Did you go to school? Was it, to say that this is your career then, like in other words, so if a young woman chose to follow in your life journey, how does one go about that?
Well, you mentioned that I have a master's degree in peace building and conflict resolution. So that education has certainly been helpful. What's not typically on my resume is that my bachelor's is in computer science, which is,
Oh,
it seems like a deviation. I thought I wanted to be an engineer when I was an undergrad,
oh,
and then I
okay.
realized I didn't. But I do have this degree. And I actually think that degree is equally as helpful because computer
Right.
science is about languages. It's about using the language of computers to create something new. And when I think about the work of social change, when I think about hope and faith and
Mhm.
imagining a better world through our faiths and then working together to bring it about, this idea of using basic materials like zeros and ones in computer science, or basic materials like human beings living our everyday lives, and pulling that together in a creative way to make a better society or create something new. My education has been very formative. I think to be a faith leader, though, more broadly, is easily accessible, I think, to every human being. My belief system, what I've been taught through Catholic Church, through Catholic school, through Christianity, is that God wants us to find Him, right? God is seeking us and hopes that we seek God too. And what that means is, in an interfaith organization, I've learned so much from people of so many different religions about how they take that journey, how they're looking for God, how they're looking for their purpose, how they're looking to make their communities in this world better. And so I think that is accessible to any human being who might want to be a faith leader, as long as we are using some tools that are available to us to seek God and understand our purpose.
That's great. Before I ask about how you network with your peers, I wanted to ask, when you address your audiences,
Mhm.
um, demographically speaking, do you have a different message, say for young people or old people, or geographically does it change? Or because social media and our messaging, our media itself is very splintered today, so is it carefully crafted that you address them in a different way, or is God's message and your message more have this universality to it?
I think the answer is yes and no. So I think God's universal message is that God loves us. God wants us to love each other. God God says, "Love me, love your neighbor, love yourself." That's kind of the fundamental message across all religions. That message never changes. But I think the beautiful thing that God has given us as human beings is diversity, diversity
Mm,
of experiences, diversity of geography, diversity of presentation, our bodies. And within that diversity are innumerable stories, innumerable parables, if you will, or examples of how we can love God better, love our neighbors better, and love ourselves. So, to
mm,
that extent, yes, I will choose different stories or different examples, but the fundamental message never changes. And it's also very important to me to start with myself. So I never
Mhm.
want to talk about creating a change in the world that I myself haven't attempted or haven't thought about or haven't tried. And so I try to tell a story about my experiences and relate that to others' experiences, so that we can work together.
Excellent. That brings me to my next question, actually. So thank you for the segue. But how do you support your work and the demands? I mean, what challenges do you have that you have to overcome? I mean, for so many careers, I think complaining or kvetching is like part of what you do when you go out after work with your peers and sort of cry in your cocktail, so to speak. But for someone in your position, people expect so much, so how do you rise above this and continue to demonstrate this sense of hope?
Well, like everyone else, I sometimes cry in my cocktail or my coffee. That does happen. But I think for me, prayer is fundamental, and different religions teach prayer in different ways. As a Catholic, obviously, we have the Rosary and we have some very formal prayers. But prayer is also listening for God. And
Mm,
as I get older, I learn it's about being vulnerable with God. And
mm,
I am learning each day to talk to God more and more, like God is my friend and God is my parent, and crying before God and sitting in confusion before God. All of that is prayer, and that helps ground me. I think there's a lot of literature now, especially targeted towards women, about self-care and about uh, focusing on ourselves and what it means to ground ourselves. And our religions echo some of those practices. And I find it very helpful to tie my faith and some of those self-care practices together so I can be grounded and healthy and as whole as possible in the midst of chaos while I'm crying in my cocktail. So
It gives us sustenance. I mean, as a Catholic, I will tell you like a funny thing, but during the consecration, where I mean, based on bread and wine,
yeah.
so of course it's like the food thing. But I, the family story is that I was on my father's shoulders, and when he held up the chalice, I screeched out very loud, "God drinks beer." So that's been an embarrassing point ever since.
I'm sure
um,
God loved it.
Yeah, so hopefully God has a sense of humor as well
I'm
for all
sure.
of that. So, so maybe you can address a little bit of some of the challenges that in your life and career maybe have had to overcome. I mean, everybody, I always say, has their own demons or obstacles, but sometimes when people look at a successful person like yourself, they'll think, oh, it was just skipping down the, primrose.
Absolutely not. Well, I will say one challenge leading a faith based organization is that I'm not clergy, right? So I'm Catholic. I
Mm,
cannot be a priest in a Catholic church. And many
mm,
of my peers are ordained, they're pastors or imams or rabbis. And sometimes that presents an obstacle. Also, sometimes the fact that I'm a woman presents an obstacle because
mhm.
some religions do not ordain women or see women as authoritative faith leaders.
Yeah.
But generally, I try to stay grounded in what I know to be true and in my own leadership skills. And I can usually overcome that. I
Mhm,
also bring an air of humility. I see
mm,
this work as service. Leadership really is service. And I am offering my leadership, I'm offering my gifts. And for those who want to receive them or find them helpful, that's wonderful. And for those who don't, that's also fine. I
mm,
think another obstacle that I've faced as a leader of a nonprofit in the last 5 to 6 years is the stress that nonprofit staff across the country are facing. It
yes.
is very difficult to try to lead with integrity and provide all the resources that people need to be healthy and thriving in our workplaces when human beings are just barraged with sickness, with economic insecurity, with housing instability. You know, folks are moving around and There's so much that's uncertain in our country right now. So for any chief executive, executive director, anyone who is leading a staff in any capacity,
Mhm.
I and my peers have really been struggling with how to lead well in this time and also hold people to high work standards, but honor folks' humanity. And that has not always been easy. And lastly, I'll share again with the nonprofit sector. The economic changes over the last 2 years have affected my organization, like so many other organizations. Many of my peer organizations have had to close or have merged with others. We had to significantly downsize last year in a way that was really painful, but we are still here. And when I talk to our funders and our donors, I hear over and over that we are not alone in this scenario. So it's just leading right now in this
Mhm.
environment very, very challenging. And it requires me as a leader to be very anchored in what is most important, my most important values, and to really trust my instinct and trust
Mhm.
my training to make very hard decisions each day.
Yeah, people always say these are like the worst of times, but you've addressed some of this. But I mean, people, like I said in the beginning, Jeanné, they are I this and some of what you just said. But when I when we started, I was talking about people being, feeling despair, so I guess this is a two-part question is how do you stay resilient and network with your peers, but also how do you identify and manifest hope?
So there is a little community of practice that I have with about four other nonprofit executives, faith based organizations. We call ourselves the Justice League informally. And we will have lunch together periodically. And there are a few other individuals that I'll have a monthly call with. And these conversations are so important.
Mm,
We're not strategizing programs together. We're not making big plans. We are really just empathizing with one another and listening to one another and encouraging one another. I think all of us need that. So if you are a mom or a grandmother, if you're retired, if you are leading a corporation or you're an entrepreneur, finding other people who have that shared experience with you and intentionally setting time to just be with them regularly
mm,
with no agenda, no outcomes required, just to see and relate to one another is very, very critical. The
yeah,
other thing that I would say for hope in this time is from my faith. I understand God to be outside of time. God always has been, always will be, and is. And with that understanding, I know that my work and my experiences, my joys and my sorrows, whatever I might accomplish, are a part of a much bigger and more complex timeline that I don't control. And my responsibility is to do the best I can with the gifts and resources I've been given in this time, and trusting that God will make the best use of it possible in
mm.
conjunction with all of the other people who are trying their best.
Wow, that's really profound. I mean, it is on our money, but trust in God. I think a lot of people have had their trust and faith shaken. So,
Yes.
that's the where the ground sort of shifts under us all, how things have been the last couple of years. Um, Pivoting a little bit, but staying on that is that so how do you build power? Because in order to implement the programs that we want or get back to being fully staffed or being able to implement these things, you need to have the power base. And when the funding goes, I mean, everyone is trying to eke out, alternate sources. So is the power money? Is the power commitment? How does that work?
Well, when I was a community organizer, I was trained that we build power in basically two ways: organized money or organized people. And
Mhm.
the organized money part, you need a lot of money. Whatever you think a lot is, it's more than that, right? What we have accessible to us is organized people. And earlier today, I was with a group of about 15 other nonprofit organizations working together to try to reduce some of the violent language that we see right now in
Mm,
our US Congress against religious minorities or against other populations. That's power. If I
mhm,
had gone by myself to talk to some of these members of Congress, it would have been important, but it would not have been as powerful as having these 15 other organization heads with me representing the hundreds of thousands of people that we all work together to organize across the country. So
mm,
I think the name of the game right now for nonprofits is collaboration. It's always been collaboration, but it's even more important right now. And it's important for us to each understand the unique role that we play and to do that really, really well. If an opportunity comes to me and I know that one of my peers would be better suited to do it, it's really important right now to yield to them, to say, maybe you should
mhm,
talk to this person, and to have people in your network who will do the same for me. And that does happen. When we collaborate in that way, I believe that we are much more powerful and much more effective. And we echo one another and amplify one another's work. And what I see in the sector is an opportunity. There's a decision point that we're facing for nonprofit leaders who are operating in an older way of thinking and trying to hoard all of the attention or elevate their brand above others. I think that is quickly falling away. But for those of us who are intentionally working together right now, I actually see all of us becoming stronger and more recognized.
from your lips to God's ears, I see that, so how do you um, like what does success look like for you personally and then for your organization and then maybe for this broader network that you're talking about where you're collaborating? Do you see it in little increments or do you look at it as, in the macro? I mean, in difficult times, in any time we need success and you need to keep the teams motivated. So, and you need to keep yourself motivated. So I know that's sort of a big question, but essentially I'm asking, what does success look like for
Yeah.
you and for the organization?
For me, individually, success looks like empowerment and recognition of the people immediately in my orbit. And I'll explain what that means. Those are two values that are very important to me. So when I'm with my team, whether they're staff or contractors, if I can acknowledge their work, if they feel recognized, if they feel seen, then I feel like I've won that day.
Mhm.
And if they feel empowered, if they took a risk and it worked out, or if they said something bold, or maybe they gave me feedback that wasn't really pleasant but was necessary.
Mhm.
That to me is an indicator that they feel more empowered to do their work well. I'm very clear I cannot do this work alone. And so that empowerment and recognition of my team and my volunteers and my staff is important. For the organization, I think for folks to relate that they are learning from the training we're offering and that they have opportunity to exercise what they've learned is very important. We get anecdotal feedback from our faith leaders periodically where they will say, one person said recently, the media training that we've been offering them has been helpful. They feel more confident when they give
Mhm.
interviews to the media now. They feel more confident speaking from their training, their theological training about what's happening in their community and that it's paying off. That to me is really important feedback, and it shows that we are winning at a very, very long game. The work that we do of changing the narrative about who we are as a country and what it means to belong, that's long work and that's hard work. We're not going to see a lot of results in 1 month's time or 2 months' time. But the more and more I hear and see faith leaders feeling confident and bold about telling that story and leading from that place, that's how I know we're being successful.
Yeah, wow. Um, that is such a brilliant way to look at all of this, and it makes it understandable. I think sometimes it can get away from just regular folks, and I think that sense of frustration sort of underpins a sense of hopelessness. But what you
Yes.
outlined, is that there is a plan in place. And when you feel that sense of control about your destiny, it is much more comforting in that way. So thank you for that. So what is, if there is a normal or typical, I should say, day or week in the life of Jeanné?
Oh my. Well, I will use this week, which is typical. It's very busy. So this week I am planning a big project. We're working on a big initiative that I'd be happy to share with your listeners once it kicks off in a few weeks here, to engage 25,000 people of faith over the next 4 months. So I was in a planning meeting about that and making some decisions there. As I mentioned also today, I met with the heads of about 15 other organizations, and we went to Capitol Hill to visit a couple of members of the House of Representatives. And I'll clarify, this wasn't lobbying about legislation. It's more about the culture of Congress and
Mm.
inviting members of Congress um, to be more inviting and also to hold each other accountable if they use violent language. So I did that for about an hour. I worked on a grant application early this morning. And I also went to FedEx because I had to mail something. So I think it's important to say that part as well. So that's a typical day, which is a little bit of everything.
A little
Um,
bit of everything. Yeah, you have
and
to
then I
be
will add this as well. A typical day for me usually includes some type of public speaking or interview as well.
good. Get the message out, the story. I had to laugh. Sorry, I was like in my head. Like talking to members of Congress about not using bad language. It's almost like it's like the sense of that we've lost such civility is like when you said congressional culture or something, it was like an oxymoron to me. I had like how far we've come. I mean, this is just crazy. Um, if I asked your friends to tell me about Jeanette, how would they describe you? What would they say?
That's a lovely question.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
I'll actually relate it back to your earlier question. There was a time a few months ago where I was feeling really down, um, not only about the world, but also about my own leadership. And I asked my friends to text me nice things about me.
Oh,
What are things that they like about me? And I highly recommend to everyone listening that you do that periodically because it lifted my spirits. And so now I have that, some of those things saved on my phone, so that when someone asks me, what do your friends think about me? I can answer. My friends have said that I am gracious, meaning I am forgiving and I'm usually listening for an opportunity to reconcile or to connect. My friends have also said that I am a person of integrity, meaning I try
mhm.
to live and make decisions according to my values. Um, some people think that I'm funny, not everybody, but some people think that I can make a good joke. Um, and people also have found me to be generous. I am an only child. And so I tell people I don't share well. I don't like people to touch my stuff. But if you need something, I will give it to you and then I'll go get another one. So
Yeah.
I try to be generous, although I will admit I don't share well.
That's so sweet. That's cute. My husband Bill's always saying, like, for me, I would give you the shirt off my back. That's for sure. To be very generous and for good causes. You get like a mama bear about those things.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So it's crazy, but we're getting near to the end here. Um, so I'll just ask you a few questions and then ask you if I didn't ask you something that you wanted to say. But can you, as an author and a writer, I like to ask what books you're either presently reading and or what you would recommend.
Another beautiful question. So I am a big fan of Paulo Coelho, and I just reread The Alchemist, which is a New York Times bestseller, very popular book. I think it's a very sweet parable about finding your purpose and what that means. I also am reading The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
Ah,
It's a philosophy book. It's
yeah.
not something you necessarily read cover to cover. But I actually think it's very useful in these times. And to clarify, I'm not advocating that we go to war. But what
No,
I
of
like
course not.
about
No,
what
I
I
mean,
like about the book is that when you read each chapter, what Sun Tzu does is help people be very honest and clear about our circumstances, about the context in which we're operating, and then make the wisest decision you can in a context that you can't control. And I think for these times, it's very important for each of us to understand we are living in a very complicated context, much of which we can't control, but we can make certain wise decisions according to that context. So I'm reading The Art of War as well. And then the last thing that I'll share is I like Sufi poetry. This is my interfaith lens.
oh,
Sufi poetry, the
yeah.
mystical or contemplative tradition of Islam. Um,
Hmm.
I I read that sometimes before I go to bed, and it helps to shift my mind. Sometimes I have interesting dreams, but it helps to open my thinking into a non-linear way of thinking, a more metaphorical way of thinking. And some of that writing is very, very beautiful, and it is elucidating.
I should say. And, just to put a punctuation mark on your art of war, I remember when I was, in corporate communications, many successful senior executives read it, but it was more also for the discipline and the strategy of it. So it wasn't really, like a shoot 'em up, kind of war. So
That's
people
right.
can feel comforted about that.
That's right.
Um, as for me, as an author about cocktails, so I forgot to be able to toast you. So I'll say
Ah,
cheers, cheers to you.
cheers.
So, yeah, there you go. Do you have a favorite cocktail or a favorite drink?
Yes, I do. So I like an old fashioned.
Oh,
A really good old fashioned will make me happy. But I also like scotch. And there is a little known drink. It's named after an actor from the 20s that I can't remember her name. But basically it's a mule. It's like a whiskey mule, but you make it
uh-huh.
with scotch instead of with whiskey.
Ah,
And it's delicious. And I do like that.
I have to try that. That's a new one on me. So it's a mule, but made with scotch.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna look that up. So you gave me something to think about. I like the old classics. When I wrote the Art of the Garnish book, most of it I just made up, but I like, because plants are the muse, so every spirit it comes from a plant. So I would
Yes.
think what grows together, what goes together, and then created things. And I like to tell people they can drink with the seasons.
Oh,
So
I love
yeah, so some people are, they only drink one thing. They're a martini person or, a Negroni person. But others, I like to say, drink with the season, something different. So do you drink the same thing every time or do you switch it up?
Usually I'm drinking dark liquor or whiskey, but I will tell you, I have a secret summer drink. I'm not a big gin drinker, but I do like a cucumber gin and tonic only if it's made with Beefeaters or New Amsterdam. It's very specific.
I should
And I
say.
will only drink that in the summertime.
Well, as a cocktail aficionado, but gin is so each one is very different because of all the herbs and the spices, the botanicals that go into it. So your branding is spot on. So if you like those brands, they mix it up in the way that appeals to your palate, which is great. So cheers to that. And is there anything that you wanted to address or say that I didn't ask?
Well, I'd love to elaborate a little bit on the interfaith nature of our work and why I think that's very important. There are many faith based organizations doing excellent work in the country. Um, but I'm very honored to lead a faith based or interfaith organization because I
Mm.
think that our faith traditions share so much wisdom. We're very different in a lot of ways, obviously, but fundamentally, as I said earlier, it boils down to God loves us. And when you start to dig into our different religious traditions, you'll see slightly different versions of the same values, but even some of the similar prayer practices, similar stories of wisdom, similar stories of how to get closer to God, and that is something that really excites me. And I offer that to your listeners because we live in a world where I think there are many leaders who want us to fear each other, who want us to look for the differences, to look for reasons to distance ourselves from one another.
Mm.
But our faith traditions actually share so much. And I'll leave you with a thought from my aunt, who is also a pastor. And she says, whenever she goes into a house of worship, whether it's a church or anything else, her first instinct is to look for what's the same and not what's different. And when she
Mm.
finds the thing that's the same, that's how she knows that she's seeing a glimpse of God. And that's something that has always inspired me.
I just got goose pimples when you said that. Um, that is just so profound, Jeanette, that yes, I agree with you that the powers that be seem to be looking for ways to fracture our foundations and crack us open and not to trust and feel the world shifting. But if we look at what makes us similar, it's building those bridges that we are more alike than not.
Yes.
That's what I hear you saying, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That is very profound, and I see how your organization is very unique. So here, I just put up your Instagram so that people can follow that. And then also here's your LinkedIn profile. So if people want to follow you from a business standpoint, I don't want to go into this too far, but I'm sorry I forgot about this to ask earlier when we were talking about the funding and so on. If people do want to give or support you, do they just contact you directly, or how do they go about supporting it that way?
The best way is to go to our website, faithinpubliclife.org. And there's a link on the front page of our website that allows you to donate. That's the easiest way to do it. But you may also contact me on LinkedIn if you like, and I will certainly tell you how to support our work.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that the audience shares with me just a profound gratitude for you taking the time. And I will say that Jeanné had a little bit of a cold. We actually rescheduled this, so you rebounded, and I can
Thank you.
see, and God bless, I can see how very generous you are. So from our tablescape, which I have to point out also, all the flowers are peace lilies. So I
Yes.
was, you know, I wanted to bring that up because of your efforts to bring peace to all of
Yes.
us. So, cheers to you. I thank you very, very much for the time, and I look forward to following your work and your efforts.
Thank you, Leanne. It was such a pleasure. And again, I wish I were there with you at that beautiful table. And perhaps one day we will be able to share lunch together.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to that. So, cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.